When my wife told me she'd been seeing someone else, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at her across the living room and said, "How long?" The way her face crumbled told me everything. She'd rehearsed this moment, expecting fury, expecting tears, expecting the kind of explosion that would justify what she'd done. Instead, she got silence and a simple question. That silence cost her everything. My name is Nathan Caldwell. I'm 42 years old, and I'm a marine structural engineer. I design bridges. Not the poetic, metaphorical kind. Real ones. Steel and concrete spans that carry thousands of lives every single day. I've spent 20 years making sure the things I build don't collapse under pressure. Turns out I learned to do the same thing with myself. Though it took my wife walking out to prove it. Let me go back to the Tuesday it all started. I'd been in Mobile, Alabama for 11 weeks, overseeing a cable-stayed bridge replacement over the bay. Hurricane damage from 2 seasons back had compromised the original pylons, and my firm landed the contract to redesign the entire support system. It was the biggest project of my career. Brutal hours, 100-degree heat bouncing off the water, a crew of 46 counting on me to get it right, but we finished 9 days ahead of schedule. My boss called it the most efficient rebuild in company history. I drove the 14 hours home to Charlotte instead of flying because I wanted the quiet. Time to decompress. I stopped at a florist in Georgia and picked up a dozen sunflowers, Rachel's favorite since college. I stopped at the Italian deli near our neighborhood for the prosciutto. She always said she couldn't find anywhere else. I was planning a weekend. Just the two of us. Maybe that bed and breakfast in Asheville she'd bookmarked on her phone 6 months ago. I pulled into the driveway at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. The porch light was off, which was unusual. Rachel always left it on when she knew I was coming home. I figured maybe she forgot, or maybe she was out. But her car was in the garage. I found her in the living room. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, not leaning back, not relaxed, perched, like someone waiting in a doctor's office for bad news. Except she was the one delivering it. "Nathan, sit down. We need to talk." I set the sunflowers on the counter. The prosciutto next to them. I didn't sit down. "What's going on?" She took a breath. "The kind you take before jumping. I've been seeing someone. It's been going on for a few months. I want a divorce." 3 sentences. Each one landing like a hammer strike on a support beam. I felt the vibration run through me, but I didn't buckle. I didn't move. I just stood there in my own kitchen, holding the car keys. I hadn't even put down yet and asked the only question that mattered. "How long?" She looked away. "Since March." March. I'd been in Savannah in March, then straight to Mobile in April. 5 months. She'd been sleeping with another man for 5 months while I worked 16-hour days making sure a bridge wouldn't kill people. I set my keys on the counter next to the sunflowers. "Who is he?" "It doesn't matter, Nathan." "You're right. It doesn't." I picked up the flowers and dropped them in the trash can. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. We can discuss logistics tomorrow." That was it. No shouting. No begging. No dramatic exit. I walked down the hallway to the guest room, closed the door, sat on the bed, and stared at the wall for 3 hours. I didn't sleep that night. But I didn't cry either. Something inside me had shifted, like a load-bearing wall quietly redistributing weight. The structure held. The next morning, I left the house before Rachel woke up. I drove to the office and sat in the parking lot until the doors opened, drinking gas station coffee and watching the sun come up over the skyline. At 8 sharp, my boss Gerald called me into his office. "Nate, the mobile project put us on the map. Federal Highway Administration is talking about us for the I-40 corridor project in Tennessee." He leaned forward. "I want you to lead it. Full authority, your own team. 20% bump in salary. This is the one we've been waiting for." I shook his hand. "When does it start?" "Preliminary surveys in 3 weeks. You'd be on site for at least 8 months. Maybe 12. I didn't hesitate. "I'm in." Gerald raised his eyebrows. "Don't you want to talk it over with Rachel first?" "Nothing to talk over with Rachel first?" "Nothing to talk over," I said. "She'll understand." He didn't push it. Gerald had been in the business long enough to know that engineers don't make decisions emotionally. We run the numbers, check the variables, and commit. That's exactly what I was doing. After the meeting, I sat in my truck and called my brother Owen. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, stranger, you back from Alabama?" "Got back last night. Listen, I need to tell you something. Shoot, Rachel wants a divorce. She's been having an affair. The silence on Owen's end lasted about 5 seconds. Then he exhaled hard. You serious? Since March. Another pause. You okay? I'm functioning. I need a lawyer. You still have that buddy from law school? Craig Pemberton. Best divorce attorney in Mecklenburg County. I'll text you his number right now. Owen didn't offer sympathy. Didn't say he was sorry. He just gave me what I needed. That's what I love about my brother. He's a plumber. He fixes things. Doesn't waste time talking about how bad the leak is. I called Craig that afternoon and had a consultation scheduled for Thursday. Meanwhile, Rachel texted me twice. Once asking if I was coming home for dinner. Once asking if we could talk. I replied to the first one with, working late. I didn't reply to the second. Thursday morning, I sat across from Craig Pemberton in his downtown office. He was exactly what I needed. Methodical, unemotional, precise. Tell me about your finances, he said, pen ready. I walked him through everything. Joint checking, joint savings, my 401k, her 401k, the house. We bought it 12 years ago when I was still a junior engineer. Paid off the mortgage 2 years early with my project bonuses. Any prenup? No. Children? No. We tried for a few years. It didn't happen. Eventually, we stopped talking about it. Craig nodded, writing. Any idea what she's expecting from the settlement? She hasn't specified yet. But knowing Rachel, she's done her homework. He looked up. In my experience, the ones who plan affairs also plan exits. I'd recommend we audit your joint accounts immediately. That sentence sat with me for the rest of the day. The ones who plan affairs also plan exits. I thought about Rachel sitting on the edge of that couch. Not crying, not conflicted, prepared. That evening, I logged into our joint banking from my laptop at the office. Checking account looked normal. Savings looked normal, but then I opened the investment portal and my stomach dropped. We had a brokerage account I'd set up 4 years ago. A mix of index funds and bonds. Last time I checked, it held about $215,000. Most of it from my bonuses over the years. The current balance was $91,000. $124,000 had been transferred out in 4 separate transactions between February and July, each one just under the threshold that would trigger an automatic alert. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. The precision of it was what got me. Not impulsive, not reckless, systematic. 4 transfers, each carefully sized. Someone had coached her on this, probably the same lawyer she'd already consulted. I took screenshots, printed the transaction records, called Craig and left a voicemail with the details. Then I drove to the one person who could trace where that money went. My best friend Dennis is a forensic auditor for one of the big accounting firms. We've known each other since college. He's the kind of guy who finds excitement in spreadsheets and thinks tax fraud is a personal insult. I found him at his home office, surrounded by monitors and empty coffee cups. Mate, you look surprised. You never just show up. What happened? I handed in the printouts. Rachel's been siphoning from our investment account. I need to know where it went. Dennis studied the documents, his expression shifting from surprise to professional focus. These are structured to avoid detection. Someone advised her. Can you trace them? Give me a week. I nodded. I owe you. He shook his head. You pulled me out of a river when we were 19. We're nowhere close to even. I went home that night for the first time since Tuesday. Rachel was in the kitchen making pasta, like everything was normal. Like she hadn't detonated our marriage 4 days ago. You've been avoiding me, she said. I've been working. We need to discuss the divorce, Nathan. I've already found an apartment. I poured myself a glass of water. Fine. I'm keeping the house. That's not fair. We both put money into this place. I looked at her directly. I paid off the mortgage with my bonuses. My name is on every check. You can contest it, but my lawyer will make it expensive. Your lawyer? She blinked. You already hired a lawyer? She blinked. You already hired a lawyer? You said you'd already talked to one. I figured we were past the point of working things out on our own. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since her announcement, she looked unsettled. I think she expected me to be the one reacting, not acting. She moved out that weekend. I helped her carry boxes to her car without a word. She took the kitchen table, the bedroom set, most of the artwork. I didn't argue over any of it. Furniture could be replaced. Money could be recovered. I was playing a longer game. The week after Rachel moved out, life accelerated. Owen's wife Tammy called me on a Sunday morning, and I could hear the strain in her voice before she said a word. Nathan, Owen collapsed at a job site yesterday. They're saying it's his back. 3 herniated discs. He can't work for at least 2 months. I was in my truck within 10 minutes. At the hospital, Owen lay flat on a gurney, looking furious about his own helplessness. His 11-year-old son, Bryce, sat in the corner pretending to play a game on his tablet, but I could see his eyes were red. "Don't start," Owen said when he saw my face. "It's not that bad. 3 herniated discs isn't not that bad. I've had worse. Name one time." He thought about it, then grimaced. "Fine. It's bad. But I've got a crew counting on me. Henderson job starts next week. Your crew can manage. I'll cover the mortgage payments until you're back." Tammy put her hand on my arm. "Nathan, you can't keep rescuing everyone. It's not a rescue. It's what family does." Owen stared at the ceiling. "You sound like Dad." "Good," I said. Dad was right about most things. Our father had been a carpenter who built houses in rural Virginia for 40 years. He used to say the same thing every time he started a new job. Measure twice, cut once, and never build anything you wouldn't live in yourself. He died 8 years ago, but I heard his voice every time I picked up a level. That evening, after making sure Owen and Tammy had groceries and Bryce had a ride to school for the week, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Rachel and a text. "Nathan, I think we rushed into this. I've been thinking about us. Can we talk?" I stared at the message in the hospital parking lot. 2 weeks ago, she told me she'd been sleeping with another man for 5 months. She'd already found an apartment. She'd systematically moved $124,000 out of our accounts. And now she wanted to talk about us. I typed back one sentence. "Contact my attorney with any divorce-related matters." Her response came fast. "Please don't be like this. I made a mistake. I miss what we had." I deleted the conversation. The following Monday, Dennis called with his findings. 4 transfers, he said. All went into an individual brokerage account under her maiden name, Rachel Engstrom. Opened in January, 2 months before the affair started, or at least before she said it started. January. She'd been planning this before the affair even began, or the affair had started earlier than she admitted. "There's more," Dennis continued. "She made a large purchase in June, a down payment on a condo in Raleigh. Title search shows a cosigner. Name's Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb. I didn't know the name, but the condo told me everything. She wasn't just leaving me. She was building a new life with my money. How much was the down payment? $62,000. I closed my eyes. Nearly half the stolen amount, invested in a future with someone else while I sweated through Alabama summers making sure a bridge wouldn't collapse. Send everything to Craig. Already done, Dennis said. And Nate? Craig says this changes the negotiation entirely. Financial misconduct gives you significant leverage. I thanked him and hung up. I expected to feel rage. Instead, I felt something closer to clarity, like when you're drilling core samples on a job site and you finally hit bedrock. The uncertainty was gone. Now I knew exactly what I was standing on. The confrontation happened on a Wednesday. Rachel showed up at Owen's house while I was helping Bryce with a science project. We were building a model bridge out of balsa wood and string, testing how much weight different truss designs could hold. Tammy answered the door, and I heard Rachel's voice from the kitchen. "I need to speak with Nathan. It's important." I set down the hobby knife and walked to the front door. Rachel stood on the porch in the rain, mascara slightly smudged, dressed up like she was trying to look her best. "How'd you know I was here?" "You're always here," she said. "You always take care of Owen's family. It's one of the things I—" She stopped herself. "Can we talk somewhere private? Say what you need to say." She glanced past me at Bryce, who had followed me to the doorway. "Nathan, please. Bryce, go check if your bridge glue is dry yet." He retreated reluctantly. I stepped onto the porch and pulled the door mostly closed behind me. "I want to come back," Rachel said, her voice cracking. "I ended things with Marcus. It was a mistake. All of it." "Marcus Webb," I said. "The one you co-signed a condo with in Raleigh." The color left her face. "How did you—" "I also know about the 4 transfers. $124,000 from our investment account, structured to avoid alerts." She took a step back. "I can't explain. You opened that brokerage account in January, before the affair, or at least before you told me it started. You planned your exit before you even had a reason to leave. Or maybe you planned the exit, then found the reason." "Nathan, that's not—" Was he worth $62,000, Rachel? Because that's what the down payment on your new life cost. My money, from the bonuses I earned while you were deciding how to leave me. She started crying. Real tears this time. Not the rehearsed composure from 2 weeks ago. I watched her fall apart on my brother's porch, and I felt a strange, detached sympathy. The kind you feel for someone who built their house on sand and seems surprised when it floods. The divorce will proceed, I said. Craig has everything. If you want this to stay civil, I suggest your attorney reaches out to mine this week. You've become so cold, she whispered. No, I said. I've become honest. I was always this person, Rachel. You just needed me to be the emotional one so you could feel justified in leaving. She stood there for a long moment, rain soaking through her jacket. Then she walked back to her car without another word. I went inside, sat down next to Bryce, and picked up the hobby knife. Which truss design do you think will hold the most weight? I asked him. He pointed to the Warren truss. That one. The triangles distribute the load evenly. Smart kid, I said. Let's test it. The Tennessee project became my anchor. 3 weeks after Rachel left, I drove to Knoxville to begin preliminary surveys on the I-40 corridor bridge. The existing structure was 60 years old. Earthquake rated for magnitudes that modern seismology had since revised upward. My job was to design a replacement that could handle what we now knew was possible. I rented a small apartment near the river and fell into a routine. Up at 5. Job site by 6. Review structural data until noon. Field work until sundown. Dinner alone. At the same diner where the waitress eventually stopped bringing a menu and just asked, the usual? On weekends, I drove back to Charlotte to check on Owen, have dinner with his family, and make sure the divorce paperwork was progressing. Craig called during my 3rd week in Tennessee. She's folding, he said. Her attorney contacted us about a settlement. She's willing to return the transferred funds in exchange for a clean split. No claim on your pension, no claim on future bonuses. What's the catch? She wants to keep the Raleigh condo, the condo she bought with my money. I clarified. Technically, the returned funds would make you whole. The condo was purchased before divorce filing, so it's a gray area. I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. Take the deal. I want this over. Craig paused. Most clients in your position would fight for the condo out of principle. I build things for a living, Craig. I don't tear them down. Take the deal. 2 months into the Tennessee project, I made a discovery that excited the engineering world far more than my personal drama. While drilling test cores near the riverbank, my team found that the existing bridge pylons had been sunk into a clay layer that was slowly liquefying. A process called thixotropy. Under the right seismic conditions, the entire structure could have pancaked into the river. I drafted a paper on our findings and the new pylon system we developed to counteract the problem. Gerald submitted it to the American Society of Civil Engineers, and within weeks, I was getting calls from firms across the country. That's career-defining work, Gerald told me over the phone. The FHWA wants to implement your system on 12 other bridges. You'll be consulting on this for years. My phone buzzed with another call. Rachel. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to her message. Nathan, I heard about your bridge paper. I always knew you'd do something important. I just wanted to say congratulations. And I'm sorry. For everything. I hope you know that. I deleted the voicemail and went back to the core samples. Owen healed faster than the doctors expected. By month 3, he was back on job sites, lighter duty, but working. Bryce won his school science fair with the bridge model we built together. Tammy sent me a photo of him holding the trophy, grinning so wide you could count every tooth. During one of my weekend visits, Owen and I sat on his back deck drinking beer while Bryce practiced pitching in the yard. You seem different, Owen said. Different how? I don't know. Lighter. Like you put something down that you've been carrying for a long time. I watched Bryce wind up for a throw. Maybe I did. Owen took a long pull from his beer. Rachel came by last week, dropped off some photo albums she thought you might want. I nodded. How'd she seem? Tired. She mentioned Marcus moved to Raleigh permanently. Sounds like things aren't going well. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not pity. Just a neutral acknowledgement that her choices were her own to live with, just as mine were. I hope she figures it out, I said, and I meant it. Owen looked at me sideways. You actually do, don't you? Yeah. Being angry at Rachel is like being angry at a flood. It happened. I can't unhappen it. All I can do is build higher next time. He clinked his bottle against mine. Dad would have said the same thing. Probably with more swearing. I laughed. First real laugh in months. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in November. I signed the papers in Craig's office, shook his hand, and drove straight to the Tennessee job site. There was something fitting about spending that day doing exactly what I'd always done. Working. Building. Making sure things held together. Gerald flew in that weekend with news. The Nakamura Consortium in Osaka wants to license your pylon system. They're offering a consulting contract. 6 months on-site, significant compensation. Japan had always been on my professional bucket list. Their approach to seismic engineering was decades ahead of most of the world. When would I start? February. But Nate, there's no pressure. You've had a hell of a year. I considered it. 6 months ago, I would have said yes without thinking, thrown myself into work the way I always had. But something was different now. Can I give you an answer after Thanksgiving? He agreed. Thanksgiving at Owen's house was the first time in a year that everything felt right. Tammy cooked enough food for 20 people despite there being only 7 of us. Owen carved the turkey with exaggerated ceremony. Bryce showed me his latest project, a suspension bridge model that actually supported a small remote control car. My mother, who'd driven up from Virginia, kept squeezing my arm like she was making sure I was real. "You look good, Nathan," she said quietly while we washed dishes together. "I was worried about you." "I'm okay, Mom." "Really?" She studied my face the way only mothers can. Rachel's mother told me at church that Rachel and Marcus split up. She's moving back to Charlotte. I try to play it carefully. I hope she finds what she's looking for. My mother smiled. "Your father used to say the same thing about people who wronged him. Right before he went back to building something better." After dinner, Owen pulled me aside. "So what about Japan?" "I've been thinking about it." "And?" I looked through the doorway at Bryce showing my mother how his bridge model worked. At Tammy rocking her neighbor's baby. At the small, ordinary, irreplaceable life happening in that living room. I'm going to counter with a shorter engagement. 3 months instead of 6. Remote consulting for the rest. I don't want to be gone that long anymore. Owen raised his eyebrows. "That doesn't sound like the Nathan who spent 11 straight weeks in Mobile." "That Nathan didn't know what he was missing," I said. 2 months later, I stood on a hillside outside Charlotte, watching a concrete truck pour the foundation for my new house. 12 acres I'd bought with the consulting advance from Osaka. Rolling land with a creek at the south boundary and a stand of old-growth oaks along the ridge. The design was mine. Single story, open plan, steel frame with my own pylon system adapted for residential use. A workshop off the back for the bridge models I'd started building with Bryce every other weekend. East-facing windows to catch the sunrise. A guest room for Owen and Tammy, a bigger one for when my mother visited from Virginia. Bryce stood next to me, watching the pour with the serious attention of a 12-year-old who'd decided he wanted to be an engineer. "Uncle Nathan?" "Yeah, buddy? How deep does a foundation have to go?" "Deep enough that nothing can shake it," I said, "but not so deep that you can't feel the ground you're standing on." He thought about that. "Is that a real engineering thing or a life thing?" I put my hand on his shoulder. "Both." That evening, I got a text from Dennis. Ran into Rachel at the grocery store. She asked about you. Told her you're building a house and happier than I've ever seen you. She didn't say much after that. I read the message, felt a brief pang of something that wasn't quite sadness, and set the phone down. The next morning, Gerald forwarded me an email from the Osaka team. They wanted to expand the consulting relationship. Year-round, remote primary, with quarterly site visits. The compensation was more than I'd ever imagined earning. I typed a careful reply, accepting the terms with one condition. No travel during baseball season. My nephew has games. Gerald called me 10 minutes later, laughing. "You're turning down a fortune's worth of billable hours for Little League?" "Not turning down. Renegotiating. There's a difference." He approved the terms. 6 months after the foundation pour, I hosted my first dinner in the finished house. The table was walnut, built by a local woodworker from a tree that had fallen on the property during a storm. It seated 10 comfortably. Owen and Tammy, Bryce, my mother, Dennis and his wife Gerald, and his husband, and a structural engineer from my team named Claire, who'd been quietly impressing me with both her work and her character for months. My mother raised her glass. "To Nathan, for building a life worth living in." The toast hit me harder than I expected. I looked around the table at the people who had shown up. Not because I asked them to, but because that's what real foundations are made of. Not contracts or obligations. Presence. Consistency. the willingness to bear weight. After everyone left, I stood on my back deck in the November cold, looking at stars I could finally see now that I lived away from the city lights. My phone sat silent in my pocket. No messages from Rachel. No emergencies. No crises. Inside, the house settled around me, the small sounds of a well-built structure finding its balance. I'd designed every beam, specified every connection, tested every load path. And I'd done it not out of fear that something might fail, but out of respect for what it means to build something right. I thought about Rachel, briefly and without bitterness. She'd made her choices. I'd made mine. The difference was that mine had a foundation I could trust. I went inside, paused at the hallway, and looked at the framed set of blueprints I'd hung on the wall. The foundation plan was highlighted in blue. Below it, in my father's handwriting, copied from a note I'd found in his toolbox after he died: build it once. Build it right. Build it to last. I ran my hand along the wall, feeling the solidity beneath the surface. Then I turned off the lights and went to bed in a house that was entirely my own, on ground that would never shift beneath me again.